From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Atmospheric Scientist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. We've got a corridor of snow coming from central Alberta through southern Saskatchewan, far southern Manitoba today. A shot of cold air in place across the prairie early this week. I guess it's midweek into the weekend, and then we've got a big warm-up to talk about next week. We'll look at the infrared satellite picture. We continue to see big areas of low pressure spinning up here over the Pacific. Strong flow coming in across the Pacific Northwest into portions of British Columbia with a lot of heavy precipitation across this region. Storm systems come up over the top of the ridge. At times, little clipper systems bringing shots of very cold air. We've got a bitterly cold air mass in place across the region right now. And at times, some snow. Again, that little corridor of snow going to be making its way through here over the next 24 to 36 hours, kind of right along this boundary where we've got the very cold air and then the not quite as cold air down here. We'll kind of see this area of low pressure riding from central Saskatchewan down into North Dakota by the time we get to about midnight tonight. That area of low pressure will be down here near the Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin border as we get into tomorrow. So the area of low pressure tracks off to the south and to the east. We get snow along the north side of that, and then very strong winds coming in on the back side of that storm system. So here's a look at the radar here early on Wednesday morning. Again, snow ongoing from Edmonton down toward Medicine Hat into parts of southwestern Saskatchewan, and then we'll continue to see this area of snow tracking off to the south and to the east through North Dakota, eventually into parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin as well. Again, snow on the north side of that storm track, strong winds on the south side. Be a bit blustery at times where we have that snow falling. We're talking about, we'll look at it in just a moment. I want to highlight the overall pattern though here first. Again, we continue to see this big ridge of high pressure reinforce itself with lower pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska. Very strong flow between the two of those, conflicting pressure disturbances there. And we just at times see little systems riding over the top of this, but we're not really seeing any big organized storm systems that are able to kind of break through this pattern and establish themselves here, somewhere like this, which would be a pattern that would tap into the Gulf of Mexico, would allow us to see storm systems lifting into the prairie. When we see storm systems lifting into the prairie, that's when, again, we tap into the Gulf. We see a lot of moisture caught up in those storms, and we're able to produce these, multi-day storm system events that either produce a lot of snow if it's wintertime or a lot of rain if we're getting closer toward the springtime. So again, storm track for heavy precipitation, we would want to see those storms lifting, from the central Rockies into the prairie. Instead, we've got storm systems that are diving from northwest to southeast. That's a recipe to tap into cold air. And this cold air does not support a lot in the way of moisture. So we get shots of cold air. We at times get some snow. We're having kind of an overachieving high impact clipper system make its way through today. As we kind of animate this, the pattern reinforces itself. I'll kind of step through time. This will be Wednesday. This is today, getting into Thursday. You see the ridge reestablish itself, another little disturbance. You see these little wrinkles at times coming through. These bring just maybe a shot of cooler air at times, maybe some flurries, just enough to kind of disturb the atmosphere, but not, anything like we're seeing going on out here. These are the big disruptive storms that we're seeing kind of scraping the Pacific Northwest, parts of British Columbia with some heavy moisture. As we get through the weekend into next week, we're going to see a big warm up here as we kind of finally get a little taste of southwest flow. This is kind of what we would be looking for. But again, you see it just, the system breaks off and kind of drops down into the southern US here as we get into, this is mid next week. So the big warm up happens, but we don't get a big trough out of this first little wave here that sets itself up. You see the next one does the exact same thing here. This would be highlighting again the calendar getting into Saturday, December 28th. So it's not a pattern that's just going to kind of load up with a big disruptive storm across the Canadian prairie. We'll look at this with the jet stream winds. Again, strong flow across the Pacific coming in towards coastal portions of British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest. But then what we get breaking off, coming over the top of the ridge, are these little pieces here, these little disturbances that, again, a little disturbance in the atmosphere, a little shot of moisture, some flurries, maybe a disturbance with the temperatures there, but not a big disruptive storm system. So what's this do over the next couple of days? We'll look at the NAM model here, a bit of a tight zoom, just to kind of watch the snow tracking through from Alberta into southern Saskatchewan, southern portions of Manitoba. So this is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, early tonight, getting into about midnight tonight, and then as the sun comes up on Thursday morning. So sunrise tomorrow, snow is now in portions of southern Manitoba, southeastern Saskatchewan, maybe some flurries continuing back here across portions of Alberta, but the heavier snow pulls away by the time we get to midday Thursday, and then we just kind of reload the pattern. I showed you there just kind of little tiny disturbances at times being lobbed over the top of the ridge. This would suggest maybe some Friday flurries. This would suggest maybe a light drizzle. These can be problematic at times, so don't laugh them off right now, but just little kind of light doses of precipitation. Again, this would be Saturday morning, maybe some light wintry mix, something's going on across central and southern portions of Alberta. The snowfall forecast from the NBM, this takes us through Thursday night. So this is your area of low pressure that tracks kind of along this path over the next 48 hours. And along and north of the surface low, we get anywhere from 5 to 10 in most areas, maybe 10 to 20 centimeters of snow accumulating again over the next 48 hours or so. I wanted to call this out. I noticed, talking about this last week, this is remarkably good verification from the European model. This is the image that I showed you when I talked to you a week ago. And this was the forecast for 7 a.m. on Thursday. So kind of tomorrow morning, we would have this area of low pressure producing snow from central Alberta into southern Saskatchewan and parts of southern Manitoba. So it's off by about 12 to 24 hours, but the location there is remarkably good and the timing pretty good as well for a week out. Maximum wind gusts over the next 48 hours, just showing you again, winds anywhere from 45, maybe 50 kilometers per hour with those gusts with the snow falling. So that could certainly cause some problems as you've got the heavier snow falling and those winds are coming in from the north and from the east. But the stronger winds, the potentially damaging and high impact winds off to the south, where we're talking about 80 to 100 kilometers per hour, where we don't have snow, but we've got very strong winds south of that area of low pressure. So let's look at kind of a wider look at the next week or so. So here's our Wednesday snow making its way in. This is Wednesday night, getting into Thursday morning. This would be midday Thursday, high pressure coming in on the backside. Just little chances for flurries then as we head into the end of the week. This is your Friday. You see just a little bit of flow coming in there, kind of squeezed between this high and the Rockies there. We just get enough lift to kick off some flurries with these little jet stream disturbances, these little clippers. This is Saturday. We'll take it quickly through the weekend. Saturday night, getting into Sunday night, and now we get into Monday. Again, I showed, the pattern is active. There's a lot going on. We are going to see some, subtle changes with it. But as I just kind of rock back and forth, on the weekend through much of next week, it doesn't amount to a lot as far as organized precipitation across the prairie. So we're cashing in on an overachiever today, but without a big change in this pattern, it is not one that supplies deep moisture to the prairie. So side by side, the European on the left, GFS on the right, total snow over the next 7 days. Good agreement there. That corridor of more significant snow, 6 to 10 inches here, with the system that's going to be overachieving with some dry, fluffy, powdery snow that will accumulate efficiently through the overnight and into the morning tomorrow. But there's not much that comes and reinforces this then over the weekend into early next week. Pretty quiet across this region, other than maybe some inconsequential flurries. So over the next 5 days, this is the pattern. Again, big area of low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, ridge of high pressure over western North America. The flow comes in, goes over the top, does something like this. Shots of cold air and flurries. That's the name of the game with a pattern like this. As we animate this, take it through the end of December, again, we see that little shakeup with the pattern as we get into kind of the last 7 to 10 days of December. You see it right here where this, at first glance, this is kind of what we would want. This, faster flow that's coming in from the Pacific, making its way in through the Rockies. But as I showed you, what really happens is a couple of these lows, they come in and they kind of dive into the central U.S., kind of a shell of themselves, really. So this is not going to be a pattern that, we have a big area of low pressure wrapping up over the Dakotas that's taken moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and lobbing it up over the top, bringing in a big winter storm, at least not as it stands right now, before the pattern starts going right back to where it was, ridging here. Go ahead and change the color here. Ridging right there, troughing over the Gulf of Alaska. This would be, storm systems kind of just doing what they've done here, flinging themselves here, and then lobbing little pieces of it over the top of the ridge. So temperatures certainly get shaken up with the pattern like this. Cold here to get started over the next few days. A shot of more mild air is going to make its way in with the pattern change as we get into next week. But then this is kind of the look at the background state for the month of January. There's going to be changes and shakeups to the pattern overall, but This signal right here, this is what you need to see, is that blue line right there. This is northwest flow. This is Clipper systems coming out of the northwest, riding the jet stream from the northwest to the southeast. The source region for these storm systems is cold, dry air off to the north. We just are not tapping into the Gulf of Mexico down here. Again, a storm track like this, that with storm systems kind of lifting like that, we do tap into the Gulf of Mexico. And so then we get that heavier, shield of precipitation. I've drawn this many times, and I've talked about this many times on these forecast videos before, because it seems like 3 out of the last 4, maybe 4 out of the last 5 winters, we've really locked into a pattern like this across the prairie. So if you like cold air, you like flurries, this is the pattern for you until, we see some sort of big change there. That's what my forecast is likely going to be week in and week out, potentially talking about an overachiever like we got here. Otherwise, temperature roller coaster, shots of cold air, light doses of snow. Here's that warm up in Calgary, -6 for the high tomorrow, up above freezing as we head into the weekend and early next week. Edmonton, big warm up as well, -16 today, -16 tomorrow, -9 on Friday, getting up above or close to the freezing mark as we get into the end of the weekend, early next week. Saskatoon, here is Regina, and then here quickly is Winnipeg. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you again. Well, now that I say that, I won't talk to you again next Wednesday. It'll be Christmas Day, so we'll go ahead and talk to you. I'll find a time here. I hate to leave it open-ended. I'll find a time to give you an update here, either late next week or early the week that follows. I know we got the New Year holiday to kind of work around as well. Busy time of year. Hope you find some time to rest. I'll do the same here. Stay warm. Enjoy the snow.